afternoon, everybody. Hi, good to have you here. I'm Inge Spungen with the Paterson Alliance. I live and work in Paterson, and I have to say there's a lot of great stuff going on there. One of them is our new mayor, and during his campaign, he was focused on getting a complete count of Paterson for the census. So when Creative New Jersey came to Paterson and we had Creative Paterson, we decided that would be one of the issues that we would look at. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. So we wanted to let the world know about the census, and we wanted to say, why is it important? Why is it important? Because there are $800 billion that are distributed annually of federal money through programs such as WIC and education and SNAP. That $800 billion is allocated based on the census. And that census is taken every 10 years, so if you don't get it right, you don't have another chance to get it right for 10 years. So from that standpoint, it's important. Congressional representation is also based on the census, as is the Electoral College. So the impact is really strong, and especially for a city like Paterson, where we are traditionally undercounted. We have 84% of our population is hard to count. Why is it hard to count? There are lots of barriers. One is just plain old apathy. One is fear of sharing data with anyone, which is understandable in today's society. Fear of government, fear of fear of ICE for people who are either undocumented or live with someone who's undocumented, or even today in today's culture, people who are afraid to even let people know that they're here, even if they are legally here. Sometimes they get pulled out too. And then there's always a lack of knowledge. So who is hard to count? Children under 5 are particularly hard to count, communities of color and poor communities as well. And why does the census impact me? Let me tell you how it can impact you. If Paterson has a school of 1,000 students, and neighboring Montclair has a student also with 1,000 students, and all of Montclair is counted, yet only 70% of Paterson is counted, funding will come to the schools for 1,000 children in Montclair and only for 700 of the 1,000 students in Paterson. That, I think, explains very clearly why it's so important. Is it safe? They've tried to make it as safe as possible, and I understand why people might not feel that it's safe. But one of the things that you should know is that the law provides that anybody who works for the U.S. Census cannot share information other than the global information. They cannot share individual information. The fine for sharing that individual information, can I talk today, is $5,000 or 5 years in jail or $250,000, and we believe that that's a strong deterrent. So hopefully people knowing that would give them a little bit more inclination to complete the census. So what did Paterson do? What are the strategies we've taken? The first thing we did is we put together a complete count committee. We brought together people from various organizations, various walks of life, and we were trying to bring together trusted community members, people from the faith community, people from the education community, because we find that those are the ones that are most trusted. We are also bringing together people from the multiple cultures. Paterson has 72 different ethnic groups and 35 languages are spoken. So in order to reach all of those, it's really, really important that we go to the people who are trusted within those communities, share the information with them, and have it brought to them in their languages, within their cultural and within their communities. So sharing the information in a way that is accessible and trusted is really critical. We've had several events. We had it was so much fun. We had a bunch of 5th graders do a rally at one of the schools, and we're going to be doing another one of those with broader grades. And the kids had this great concept where each school, there were 5 schools that participated, and each school had their 5th graders put together a poster about why the census was important. And these kids just melted your hearts with their cuteness, but also they were so impressive with the studying that they did to put together the census in general. So we've had rallies. We're going to be doing more. We have a website. If you want to find out more about it, it's patersoncounts.org. It was a very simple way to get the word out. It's available. The website is available in 5 different languages, and I can show it to you after afterwards if you'd like. But I wanted to share one thing with you that I thought was really a lot of fun. And this is the Paterson Counts. This is a short clip from our first rally of the 5th graders that I mentioned. Let's see if I can get that.
1, 2, 3.
And our thought was that if kids understand it, they tell their parents. Parents understand what their kids are saying in a way that comes home from school, comes home from wherever. So we felt that that was a really, really important resource to tap into. So we are using the schools, the Board of Ed is involved in this, and we're having, as I said, another rally at the end of the month to bring in additional students. And this one is going to be there's going to be an early grades, and then middle grades, and then upper grades, and they're all going to come together. And then in the evening, we're going to do a rally for the parents. You saw our mayor in action. He is our biggest, we call him our cheerleader in chief. He's the biggest fan for the census, and I think that that is critical if you're wanting to do this. Do you have questions? I talk fast, so that may have not.
I think it's more of a common question. We're going to find that more people are intimidated by the census, so we have a harder road to get that. I'm in Cumberland County, so again, we have the whole county has similar problems trying to get people counted.
Right.
We have a definite barrier with that, but going with the community members that are trusted to get them to understand and pass that on, hopefully. I know they train the census workers, but I guess.
Well, the idea is that within the census workers, you want to get people in your community, in the various compartments of your community that have, and you want them to apply for the jobs that are available through the census so that they will be able to share information more clearly with them. The citizenship question you may have heard about is before the Supreme Court, whether that's going to be added to the census or not. Unfortunately, the damage has already been done. So many people have heard about it, and that frightens them even more, and it's been more of a hindrance, I think, than we could even imagine. And that was all due to one person thinking that it would be a good thing to add. And the Supreme Court, we'll have to just wait and see. We won't know until June whether the Supreme Court will allow them to have that question on the census. Yes?
City of Camden did host in our community center for test taking from the community, as well as we did educational things with the school. We partnered, our social service division and our housing development. We partnered together and brought the school in, and we brought someone from New Jersey of a school system to teach the community about the census and how it ties into culture. And so we brought the community together, and more people came to test for jobs, as well as allow people to come into their homes to take the census.
Well, one of the things that Paterson is doing is the school district is incorporating a census curriculum into K through 12 next year, and so that will be part of the education process. But I think there's a lot to be done, and it's hard to imagine how we can get people who don't want to be counted, and that's going to be really tough. It's going to be a lot of one-on-one. But I do think our website has great information about just the basics of the census. It has it, as I said, in the multiple languages that are spoken in Paterson, and also it has a copy of the actual census form on it, so people can see this is what it's going to look like. The other issue with the census this year is that for the first time, it's going to be electronic. So that what's going to happen is you, as an individual, are going to have something sent to your home. Each address is going to have a specific ID number, so that address will be given that ID number, and everyone in that house is supposed to be counted. So if you've got multiple families living in one house, which is not uncommon in Paterson, everyone has to be counted, and it's really important that everyone knows that. If you have a home in Paterson and you have 2 apartments that you're renting out, those are likely not going to get their own census address, and so you'll have to make sure that everyone within that house is counted. So it's really important to know that. And so they're going to send out information to everyone about about how to do it online, and then they're going to follow up with people. And when people don't respond, then there will be what they call enumerators who are going to be knocking door to door. But the enumerators the budget has been cut to, like, I think about there. So it's going to be really hard to get the enumerators, and so they're going to really count on it. So another thing that we're doing is we're looking to have the library, businesses within the community have access to computers where people can go do it at, again, a trusted place. So we have 5 library branches. They will all have computers or tablets where they can people can come in and do the census and work with somebody. And again, the language is going to be important. I think there are 29 languages, or 59 languages that the census is accessible in. So if you call the Census Bureau, you can talk to somebody in one of 59 languages. So that's important to know. The census itself is available in, I believe, 12 different languages. So there is some effort to make it accessible to people who might not otherwise get to be able to access the information. Yes.
Inge, from Fairlawn, which is by Paterson. You mentioned the importance of money and students being counted. But are you also telling people that the census is also very important for redistricting for voting? Or are you just getting the money issue?
No, absolutely. We're telling people all of those things. The funding is I think critical, and that's the one that's going to really impact people, their pocketbooks. We are absolutely talking about the fact that the census is going to be determining how many congressmen we have or congresspersons we have. And in fact, last census we lost one in New Jersey. And the other thing is the Electoral College is important to make sure that we know that we have the voting power through our communities. So, yes?
Do you have an estimate on how much funding Paterson has lost out on since the last census?
Well, it's really hard to know that because, when somebody isn't counted, we don't necessarily know that they're not counted. What happens is we said that 84% are hard to count, and what that means is that when they send out the letters to everyone saying complete the census, 84% of the people did not respond. So, that doesn't mean that they didn't respond later. That doesn't mean that they didn't figure out how to do it later, because clearly there was an impact. But there's no way of knowing who's not counted because there are people that stay under the radar. Yes?